Here on this rainy Sunday, the earth is being nourished by the water falling from the sky. And to those on Zoom, I hope you're cuddled up with a cozy cup of your favorite beverage and a warm blanket. We have come to the time to begin our service together. I'm the Reverend Margaret O'Neill, and in watching the General Assembly last June, I learned the practice of introducing ourselves when we're in front of you so that people with visual impairment have a narrative about what other people are seeing with their eyes, so folks can see with their ears. And so I'm the Reverend Margaret O'Neill. My pronouns are she, her. I am a cisgender white female in her elder years. My hair is medium length, sort of light brown with a few, I call them silver highlights. And I'm wearing a black skirt, a gray jacket, and a white turtleneck with my Advent Solstice stole. It's got little stars on it as we deepen into this precious time. Today's the first Sunday of the month, which means Family Chapel, and I don't see anyone here with children. But if people do come in with children, you might redirect them to the Family Chapel, which is over in the sanctuary at the other end of these buildings. And that's led by our Director of Programs for Children and Youth, Elizabeth Baldas, and your Director of Music Ministry, Olga Martinez. Family Chapel lasts about 20 minutes. In case you're wondering where the children are, Family Chapel lasts about 20 minutes, after which children and youth go to their usual groups, and the adults with them will rejoin the service here. Since I serve as part of your ministerial team, but am not often with you in the pulpit, I'll give a few words of introduction for those of you that haven't yet encountered me. I'm an intentional transitional minister, currently in the final year of a 5-year developmental ministry at the UU Church in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which is just to the east of Philadelphia. I have a contract with your Board of Trustees for 5% of my time to work with Reverends Linda and Lynn to support your transition this year between the end of Reverend Sam Trumbore's ministry and as the deep work of preparing to find your next settled minister begins. Thank you for the beautiful music. I call us into community with words adapted from Bruce M. Clary. Advent is the season of anticipation and preparation for the glorious festival of Christmas. It anticipates the star by which kings and shepherds alike are led to the heavenly voices within them, singing of the eternities which have always sustained them, the lovely eternities which make kings shepherds and shepherds kings. Advent is a season of hope and warmth, a time in which it is well to look into our hearts and not be surprised to find in them divine things in humble and human surroundings. It is a time to consider those forgotten things that give birth to joy, goodwill, and peace. Advent is a time for loving again those who are lost and lonely, and to have sympathy for those who are never moved to tears of joy or sorrow, those who never hear angelic voices or never see miracles in mangers, those who never follow the promise of a star. Advent is a time to say to those who sit in the darkness that upon them the light will shine, and the divine visits their lives not in golden splendor, but in the rough-hewn simplicity of their needs and care. And so once again, we gather in this time of waiting, in this time of growing darkness, to share, to shape, to give voice to our highest commitments and highest aspirations. Come into our service together. We will now light our chalice, and I invite you to join in the words that are in your order of service. Welcoming all free seekers of truth and meaning, we gather to excite the human spirit, to inspire its growth and development, to respond morally and ethically to a troubled world, and to sustain a vital and nurturing religious community. A very short reading from L.R. Nost. Do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break and all things can be mended, not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go, love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world waits in darkness for the light that is in you. So ends the reading. We all know about waiting in lines, waiting for things to happen. As a child, I remember waiting for Christmas. It seemed to take forever to arrive, and that was even in those years before the decorations started going up in October. Along with making my lists and checking them twice, there were the rituals of Advent, a cardboard Advent calendar with a tiny door for each day of the waiting period. Who remembers Advent calendars? Yeah, they're all over the place this time of year. An Advent wreath with the ritual of lighting 1, then 2, then 3 and 4 candles to mark the time. Advent calendars haven't changed much since my childhood, although my most recent one held treats for my dog. The same little cardboard doors to open, marking the time of waiting for the arrival of the big day, when all wishes will be fulfilled, all treats will be given out, or so we might hope. The season of Advent in the Christian calendar is all about the coming of the Messiah, the one who will lead us to the perfection of the world. In Christian tradition, this season is a time to commemorate the first coming of the Messiah in the person of Jesus over 2,000 years ago, in anticipation of the return of the Messiah in the second coming, which will mark the deliverance of humanity from evil, bringing peace and justice and righteousness to the world. This time of year also brings the celebration of Hannukah, which begins this Thursday. Hannukah originated in the time when Antiochus IV was emperor of the Syrian Greek Empire, which included the land that is now Israel. Under his reign, the Jews were severely oppressed, the practice of their religion prohibited, and their population assimilated into Greek culture. After centuries of oppression, a Jewish nationalist group, the Maccabees, and a religious traditionalist group, the Hasidim, joined forces in a successful revolt against the forces of the empire, retook the city of Jerusalem, and rededicated the temple, the symbolic center of Jewish religious practice. At the time of the temple rededication, there was very little oil left that had not been defiled by the Greeks. Oil was needed for the menorah in the temple, which was supposed to burn throughout the night, every night. There was only enough oil to burn for 1 day, yet there was a miracle. It burned for 8 days, lasting until a fresh supply of oil could be prepared. The 8-day festival of Hannukah commemorates the miracle of the oil, a divine intervention that pushed back the darkness in a time of struggle. No matter what our theological perspective or faith tradition, this waiting time is deeply connected to the natural cycles of the earth as we approach the winter solstice, the longest night on the threshold of the winter season with all its harsh beauty. Our midwinter celebrations speak to the innately human struggle to ward off a sense of despair in the darkness, despair at the violence and pain we see around us, awaiting the birth of hope, the miracle of light, the relief which has been promised, the fulfillment of all wishes, the expectation and preparation for the healing of the world. I love this midwinter time of waiting as the power of the sun fades, the days grow colder and the nights grow longer. Though my personal theology is neither Christian nor Jewish, my theology is earth-centered. My sense of divinity is in the cellular structures of life, and my sacred spiritual practice is the cultivation of the earth, caring for her green and growing children, and deep work is integral to my practice. In the fall, I prepare the beds, mulch and trim and dig, burying daffodil and crocus bulbs in the damp, dark earth so they emerge months later as bright harbingers of spring. I trim back old stems on the woody plants to clear the way so that new growth may flourish. My theology relies on my human agency to support the power of life, doing the necessary deep work in the dark season to prepare for the return of the light. This time of darkness is not about waiting passively for a miracle from the heavens, but about the deep work of creation, of clearing, of preparing the seedbed, of germination and gestation, a time to create the conditions for the transformation of ourselves and our world. To paraphrase the words of Mennonite writer Shannon W. Dicus, quote, "We categorize experiences of waiting, unknowing, confusion as seasons of darkness. Anytime we cannot see and control our spheres, we name it dark and separate it from the reach of the divine. But the winter tree hangs naked for months, and pregnant bellies protrude gradually. And as the story goes, the Magi traveled for months following the star to find the newborn child. That time was not wasted. Between daylights, divine work endures. What if we're free enough to do the same?" End quote. What if we are free enough in this time between daylights to prepare for the future, to use the fertile resources of unknowing and confusion to release the fetters of the past and allow new seeds to germinate, new life to grow until it's ready to be born? This time of waiting can reawaken our power of human agency, conviction that if peace, justice, and righteousness are to come to the world, if grounded communities of faith are to welcome those who seek the experience of belonging, it is up to us to make it happen. Creating peace and justice and righteousness, mobilizing our human agency to create a powerful and welcoming community of faith is an extraordinary thing to do. Shared responsibility, locally, nationally, worldwide, shared responsibility is at the heart of human agency, at the heart of a proactive stance toward healing the world. Shared responsibility implies an active waiting, an investment in the future. It implies the kind of deep change that business professor Robert Quinn talks about in his book, Building the Bridge as You Walk on It. So think for a moment about that image. You've got a space, chasm, maybe a canyon. You need a bridge, and you're going to build the bridge as you move across it. Feels like a risky enterprise, right? Yeah, okay. So Quinn says this is what we need to do, what we must do to move into the world that's evolving around us. He begins by describing what is for most people a normal state of being focused on ourselves, worrying about how we look to others, content to remain in our comfort zone. The alternative to our normal state is what Quinn calls the fundamental state of leadership. He advises that, quote, "To enter the fundamental state of leadership is to make deep change. When we are in the fundamental state of leadership, we become more purpose-centered, internally driven, other-focused, and externally open. In the fundamental state of leadership, we become less comfort-centered and more purpose-centered. We stop asking, what do I want? Instead, we ask, what result do I want to create? An honest answer to this question, he says, creates an image or vision that may attract us into the uncertain journey that is the creative state. As we begin to pursue purpose in the face of uncertainty, we gain hope and energy. As we move toward purpose, we experience meaning and become filled with more positive emotions. Becoming truly purpose-centered is an extraordinary thing to do. We begin to close the gap between who we think we are and who we think we should be. In this process, we feel more integrity and we feel more whole. Our values and behavior become more congruent. Our internal and external realities become more aligned. Becoming more internally directed is an extraordinary thing to do. As our sense of achievement and integrity increases, we become more secure, less selfish, more willing to put the common good ahead of the preservation of self. As we feel better about ourselves, we are more capable of being genuinely concerned for others. We become more transparent and authentic. Our relationships increase in meaning, trust, and caring, becoming other-focused, is an extraordinary thing to do. When we meet our needs for increased achievement, integrity, and affiliation, we increase our confidence that we can learn our way forward in an uncertain and changing world. When we have such adaptive confidence, we become genuinely open to all forms of feedback. We're better able to embrace the truth of the dynamic world. When we do this, we learn and adapt. We then further grow in awareness, competence, and vision. Becoming externally open is an extraordinary thing to do. When we are in the fundamental state of leadership, we begin to attract new flows of energy. We overcome entropy and slow death. We become more fully alive. Furthermore, we begin to attract others to this fundamental state of leadership. We become extraordinary. In this state of increased integrity, courage, and energy, we are leading in the most powerful way possible. We have a purpose or message, and we are living symbols of that purpose. End quote. In this time of darkness, as we await the light, we can choose to become living symbols of our purpose. This Unitarian Universalist congregation is moving through a complex transition in a time when the entire world is in transition, with a new generation coming of age in the midst of crucial challenges to human well-being and human rights, democratic governance, the integrity of the climate, and the ultimate viability of the lives we have created in this contemporary world. And I say this as the International Climate Conference is struggling with that notion of ultimate viability. Your congregational transition has to do fundamentally with leadership, not only preparing and searching for a minister who will lead you into the future, but also the challenge of renewing your congregational leadership in the midst of global and generational change. In this time, we find the potential for shifting into the power of fundamental leadership grounded in the principles and values of our liberal faith. This is a time to ask fundamental questions about fundamental leadership. What does it mean to be a Unitarian Universalist? What does it mean to be a member of a congregation? What does it mean to be part of this particular UU congregation? What is our shared vision for this institution of faith? And what is our purpose, our reason for being in the world? And how do we become a living symbol of our purpose? Now is the time to ask, what result do we want to create as we are willing to move into the uncertainty journey that is the creative state, as we are building the bridge as we move out onto it? To live a life of faithful commitment means being open to the possibility of deep change, open to moving into a state of fundamental leadership in which we become more purpose-centered, internally driven, other-focused, and externally open. I believe that our UU faith tradition challenges and calls us to move toward a state of fundamental leadership, toward shared responsibility as we heal the world, as a community of commitment, a community of faith, a community of transformation. On October 22nd, I facilitated a working session in which about 60 of the members here responded to the question, what are your hopes and wishes for this congregation? What result do we want to create as you named your hopes for the future? As you can read in the transition process update that was published in your Windows Weekly this past week, the priority areas of focus that came to light in the workshop included membership, leadership, engaging youth and families, strengthening the relational covenant, reviewing and strengthening financial processes, supporting diverse programming and communication, increasing the acceptance and inclusion of all diversities, and strengthening the congregation's role in advocacy and social justice. Some of the areas you named as priorities were basically managerial, such as improvements in financial systems and communication, and this is valuable work in this transitional time, positioning this institution for the future. The conversation about leadership priorities focused on the qualities you might seek in your next minister, and while that's important, I think you will find clearer answers in that area later in your process. Since in working with Reverends Linda, Lynn, and me, you are just beginning to differentiate the core identity of this congregation from the ways your system adapted to your clergy leadership of the past. In the workshop in this room last August, I introduced the crystal metaphor as part of the deep work of this transitional time to release the shapes and the practices that were developed to accommodate your former leader, making space for new leadership and discovering new and authentic ways of being. Any organization shapes itself around the people in leadership. And this time between leaders, this time of transition when there are leaders working with you intentionally to plan for the future, is a time to release those old patterns and consider what are your authentic patterns right now, who you are, and what do you want for the future. Other priorities that were named in the October workshop can provide insights into the deep work of this transitional time as you prepare to be a vibrant congregation for the future. These include the areas of membership, relational covenant and civility, diverse programming, and accepting all diversities. And in a changing world, it seems to me these priorities, membership, relationship, diversity, are actually an interwoven set of hopes for the faith community you aspire to be. Member connection relies on a church culture that is welcoming and radically inclusive and deeply relational. Our diverse society requires active intentionality in building a covenantal community where members are self-aware, committed to undoing oppressions, highly relational, and well-bonded and well-bounded in their behaviors. As the congregation creates a living symbol of your values and commitments, you create a true community of acceptance, respect, and belonging in a fractured world. All of society and all congregations at this point of history are facing a generational shift in leadership. And research shows that younger UUs have values and priorities different from those in my own baby boomer generation. As Albany UU considers how best to use this transitional time to prepare for the next phase in your long history, your transition team has realized the need to expand the circle of input as you chart your course into the future. To hear from members beyond those who attended the October retreat, with an emphasis on newer and younger members, to learn of their needs and desires so that all voices and perspectives are heard. The transition team is planning outreach to include all members into the wider listening process with the same questions that were used in the October gathering to really look at what do you want to create here, working with leaders and staff to identify the best ways to reach and involve everyone who wants to share their ideas. The listening venues may include small group listening circles, in person or on Zoom, individual conversations, and opportunities to respond in writing. Those conversations will begin in January after the winter holidays, and the responses will be integrated into the October results, expanding the discernment of this congregation's priorities for the future. This inquiry to design the future is an act of fundamental leadership, part of being and becoming a Unitarian Universalist church that is more purpose-centered, internally driven, community-focused, and externally open. From the place of fundamental leadership, we can transform ourselves in order to transform the world for more peace and wholeness. In this time of Advent and Hannukah, this time of waiting in the darkness, my hope for the future of our faith is that we await the fulfillment of our dreams in an active and engaged way. May we all move toward shared responsibility as we ask, what result do I want? Do we want? What result do we want together to create? How might we co-create a congregation that is truly inclusive, working actively to heal a hurting world? How can we work to eliminate the inequities the injustices and oppressions that rob us of the rich treasure of human potential. How might we, as Unitarian Universalists, activate our leadership potential to do the extraordinary thing? As we open our hearts to create lives that express our deepest values, may we work more deeply in response to a changing world. May we be open to deepen and change, waiting and working for a world transformed by the power of our love. So may it be. And now we enter a time of prayer and meditation. Let us hold a time of silence to hear the quiet voice within. And in words, this is a time of waiting. This is a time of darkness. This is the time of coming to birth. Let the jingle bells be silent. Let the glaring lights and the bright colors go dim, for they herald a season that is not yet here. This is the time of turning inward. This is the time of longing. This is a time of preparing. This is the time of waiting. What do you long for, O my soul? What do you long for? Nothing the eyes can see, nothing the hands can touch, nothing the ears can hear. What do you long for, O my soul? Where will you find it, O my soul? Deep, deep, deep down in the dark, in the silence beyond all words, beyond all thought. It will find you, O my soul. It will find you when the time is ripe, when you have given yourself to the dark, to the silence, to the waiting. This is a time of waiting. This is a time of silence. This is the time of coming to birth. So may it be.
Thank you and welcome to all who've joined us today. If you'd like to learn more about our congregation or Unitarian Universalism, you can stop by the table in the lobby and speak with Nelson, our welcome table host. And those on Zoom can reach out through the chat window. There will also be opportunities to socialize and welcome newcomers after the service, both for those on Zoom and those here in Community Hall. And now we have a community message from Jim Chicoine.
Thanks, Peg. I promise to keep this short, otherwise Olga will give me the hook. So I'm here on behalf of the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee has already started working on a new budget that starts in July. As with the current budget, the future budget will be tight, and some decisions will need to be made. The committee is already addressing the issues that were identified in the current budget, and we'll be sending out requests to the committee soon with the expectation to get some your budget requests by mid-January. Each committee will have an exact amount in next year's budget, so no guessing. In January, notices will be sent out to you regarding the status of your pledge. Please remember not using credit cards for your pledge will save us 3%. Anything we can do as a community will help the budget situation. So if you have ideas or thoughts, some of the committee members will be at the coffee hour to talk to you. By the way, we didn't use your money for the snacks in the coffee hour. And by the way, I'll have my trusty red pen with me, so if you have good ideas, I'll be making adjustments. And thank you for your attention, and thanks again to Olga for keeping me straight.
We're glad you joined us today, and this concludes our service.